We're back.
Sweet. Yeah, well, I think in like to answer your question in terms of how to create the space and keep having the conversations, a lot of the times it's just prodding and probing. And I find that like there's a little bit of resistance with a lot of the guys that I talk to as well. It's just like, nah, I could, but I got better things to do. I'm like, yeah, do you though? It's just one of those things like if you want it, you'll actually reach out for it for one. And this is sort of the clarification process that I have with the guys I interact with on my socials as well. It's just like you can tell straight away whether someone's here to do the work
Mm.
or they're sort of just, what are you
We
really
find
about? And
that
they're
when
sort of
we
just
give,
like,
yeah, when we give away the course for free, I like it happened the other day because I had this girl be like, she just kept landing like bad relationships or not being able to land a guy. The girl's a smoke show. So I'm like, well, it's not your looks. So let's figure out what's going on here, and I was like, I know exactly what's going on. I could hear from her story that's very similar to mine. So I was like, just give us a review. And she's like, well, I just don't have time right now. And I was like,
yeah,
you don't have
yeah,
time to work on the most important thing, which is you, because you want to make money.
mm,
But if you work on you, you'll make more money. That's the irony
mm,
of it all, right?
yeah.
I just think
I
it's
got a
the
question for you.
discomfort.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
Two, question.
That's yeah, on the discomfort, that's just the one thing. It's like people are more comfortable to be in pain than they are to experience the discomfort of the unknown, right? Like she's that famous quote. It's like it's so true. Like even for myself, I tell the same story. It makes me feel like shit, but yeah, it's familiar. So I'm gonna stay in that little bubble
yeah.
and ruminate over the same thoughts and the same experiences and all that sort of stuff. Or I can get to work on shifting that and changing that. It takes bravery, it takes courage because it's not easy. And you're going to have to be really honest and open with yourself about what's actually happening. But my question for you guys is what's the dynamic like with the women that reach out to you, like in your space as well? Is there a lot of engagement there or is it kind of like pulling teeth a little bit? Because from the guy's perspective, for me, sometimes like I really have to work to bring a guy and like help him step over the line to be able to do the work sometimes. And in a lot of cases, I'm like, maybe now's not the time to do the work because I don't want to actually force it. The best people I've worked with and the best experiences have come from the most easiest calls. Like, yeah, cool, signing up right now. Let's do it. Like, I need to fix this. And they're all on board and they know that they're at that point and they're ready to go. But all the
Yeah.
stuff prior, it's like, okay, my job is to speak to the pain. And that's what I do on my social media as well. It's like, I need to be able to speak to that for the guys
Yeah.
that read it and say, yeah, that really hit me to my core. So what's it like for you guys?
Very similar, especially with women. It's very difficult. Every once in a while, I get mostly guys, first of all, who, what I'm finding is there's a lot of guys out there that, number one, aren't feeling heard, especially by a woman. To feel heard and understood by a woman and to be able to try to see a woman, they want a woman's point of view is a lot of the reason they'll come to me, right? Or they'll see like the picture that I've painted of a relationship, and so they come to me being like, how do I find a woman that thinks like you? I'm like, well, you have to be a man that thinks like A, B, and C, right? So, but the getting women to, number one, be vulnerable with me is hard enough, which is why I'm trying very hard to shift. And we're really working on like, we're about to do some major changes in socials and what we're doing for our marketing, because I came into this space so my background is very interestingly similar to yours. Grew up in the church, right? Like hardcore, like the wedding ring, the whatever it's called, purity ring, no sex until like after college. And then once I lost my virginity, my worth went right out the window, right? I felt like I was now an apple that had been bitten and no man would ever want me and I'm done for. And so my life kind of went like in the shitter because my brain just could not handle I built up my purity being my worth my entire life. Like that's what made me valuable as a woman, as a human being. So it really took a toll on me. And I'm still like, I had worked through that, but I'm still working on those things. Like I was telling Kate today, I'm like, I'm frustrated. and I'm angry, and like there's like you were talking about, like there's still anger coming up today that I'm trying to recognize what's actually happening. And I was going for a walk, and I'm going to bring my laundry. And as I brought the laundry to this tiny little like shack, you know, in Thailand, I'm like, I feel so much better with this perspective shift. Like, look at what you have. Like, look at how blessed you are. What are you mad about? And then I texted her and I was like, I feel unworthy. I feel unloved. I feel unappreciated. Like, what's actually going on, you know? And there's no like, there's deeper reasons, of course, for those things to bubble up, but I'm digressing really far. So the point is that I have for years had this social media and tried to have this image, and it's like I'm actually having to fight that now. That is what is not serving me and what hasn't served me for years. And I had so many people be like, you don't need to dress like that, you need to like dress more conservatively. And I was fighting this church upbringing, so I was like, I can dress however I want, right? But people don't find me approachable because of this beautiful, sexy facade that I spent so many years trying to create, because I was also a Christian girl in public schools. So I was put in this ugly duck category, and I wanted to be cool and I wanted to be sexy, but I was just the token Christian girl. And so it's this like now wanting to love and appreciate that little girl that like I need her now. I need her in this space so that girls can feel comfortable to talk to her, because that's who they're actually talking to. But all they see is a lot of followers and MTV or bikini photos, and I'm the last person they want to talk to. So every once in a while, when women hear my story and hear that I've been through abuse and hear that I've gotten out of that and hear me like be raw, then they come to me and they're like, thank you, this is what I'm going through. But actually getting them to do the program is not, we haven't had really a single one.
I get a lot of women, Chels, like you'll agree, I get a lot of women coming to me, but it is that step of, and what I've realized is, because I look at it in my own journey, a lot of women relate to the stuff that I share. And look, I'm just happy that like it's finding them and it's giving some sort of healing. But in terms of getting people to actually show up, because that's a big word for us as well. We were like, we should get a t-shirt just saying show up. Because honestly, that's been the game changer for us. Like this year, it's literally just like show up, whether you feel like it or not, show up. And that's how you're going to change your life. And this is the thing. And it's not comfortable. And there's so much fear. And there's days, you know, she was staying with me for the last 2 months. And we had the most beautiful experience of consciously relating with each other, but like on that level, on like such a beautiful, intimate level, but just like as best friends. And I said to her at one point, I was like, I think this is teaching us like how to give in relationship and also what to expect, you know? And I think it's so important. So like, you know, with you, I feel like the people that you surround yourself with, right? And I'm also digressing, but I'm going to come back to the actual question. But the people that you surround yourself with, it's so fundamentally important. And I think for men's work as well, there's so much of this toxic masculinity. And it's actually, I shared this the other day. I just got so angry and I was like, we need you, men. We need you. We need you in your power, in your grounding. I like how you explained that. Just being in your heart, like be in your heart. That's your direct line to God, you know? When you're in your heart, you can still do things afraid. You can still show up. You can be in your authenticity. But I feel like men are bombarded with this narrative of like, shut up, actually, and you're bad and you're this and you're that. And look, I've been through an abusive relationship. I've got a crazy story. We all have crazy stories, but I still want to believe. I still want to trust. I want to help people do the work because I look at what happened to, you know, my late husband. He's no longer here, obviously. And like, that's just mental health, man. That is, it's so crazy, like how the stories that we tell ourselves and the conditioning from society just makes us so scared, makes men and women so scared to actually be vulnerable, because that's what it takes to heal. It takes stepping into vulnerability. It takes the people you surround yourself with. So having strong male friendships, people who like the work you do, encourage that side of you to come out. you know, who are saying, you know, be self-actual, work towards self-actualization. And, you know, how I always look at it is, I mean, I heard, this is going to sound crazy, but I watched this video. It's not crazy. I'm obsessed with Machine Gun Kelly. I just love his music. And I watched this video
Let's go.
on what he said about his daughter and the relationship. So I've got two kids, two daughters, and they said how that hug from a father is the basis of what women are going to look for in a man. So if we are not helping the society to heal, like if we're not helping the men to, you know, if you had a vacant dad, or I look at my late husband, like there was stuff there that I can just see it, like everything from childhood is how we behave on the outside. So I don't want my daughters growing up and looking for what they saw happen in my relationship, because I wasn't safe, you know? You know, it wasn't all bad, but I wasn't safe half the time. And unfortunately, my kids had to see quite a bit of that. And it's just I'm going all around here now. I've just gone on a whole loopy story. But my point is it's so important the company that you keep and how we show these men are going to be raising daughters one day. And do you want your daughter to be in an abusive relationship? Do you want your son to be in a position where he's not speaking his truth and holding all that down? And what does he end up doing? Taking his life, because he was never allowed to be him, to step into his masculinity, to express his feelings, like not being strong all the time. So that's a lot. I don't know what you want to take from that.
No, I think you're spot on with that though, and it brings up the very relevant point that it's not just about you, right? Like there's connections. We're all connected in that way as a collective. And when a man is grounded in his masculine form, he gives the permission for a woman to be able to be open and express herself in her femininity. And that's like
Anya, can you change the electricity? Something has happened to the power. Shit. Can you change the electricity? Something's happened to the power and I'm on a Zoom meeting.
there we go. What was the last thing you heard, Kate?
You said it's so, oh my God, like you stopped, it was like right at the beginning. It was right at the beginning. What you started to say, it was like, it's so important to, and then.
All right. Well,
anyway.
no, well, I was just going down the road of that it's not just about you, like as an
Yes.
individual. There is like, because we're all connected in that way, right? And I was just saying, it's like when a man's truly in his masculine form, he gives a permission for a female to be in her full essence of what it means to be feminine, to be nurturing, to be caring, to be the dark energy, to be the light energy. Like she feels safe enough to do that. But we get stuck in these these trends that go around. You see them on social media, like toxic masculinity, red pill society, like genders just going at each other, like feminism, all this sort of stuff. Like I get it. Everyone's been hurt. Everyone's been in pain. Absolutely. Relatively speaking, some may be worse than others. But what if we all took responsibility for where we're at? What if we all took that upon ourselves? You know what? Like I've got some shit that I need to sort out. That's my burden to bear. What if I took ownership of that? What would we look like as a society if we all did that? It's hard to actually talk about that if someone's coming to you and say, "Hey, I need help in my relationship." Yeah, there's a lot more going on than just a relationship, but that is what it is. That's in the details. That's you figuring out how can you open up to your partner a little bit more. How can you lean into those difficult conversations? How can you be brave enough to express that, you know what? I'm feeling a little bit heightened right now. I'm just going to take 5 minutes to go for a walk and then come back and we talk. Like, how can we keep doing those little things? That's going to be the defining factors of it all. And with the responsibility from both parties, yes, like it takes two to tango. Absolutely. But in that though, like people need to start having the conversations around that. Like, what does it mean to show up? You know, what does it mean to have the difficult conversations? What does it mean to be emotionally intelligent? What does it mean to hold space? What does it mean to heal your inner child? Like that's the education process, right? And then it's just figuring out, okay, well, how can you speak that to as many people as possible? How can that resonate with as many people as possible? And going down that road of like, yes, being on socials, having conversations, opening your door for someone that is really struggling, not expecting anything in return. It's like all those little things, they do add up, but it all starts with us. And this is what we come back to from the beginning. It's like it always comes back to you. It always comes back to self. It's like, how are you showing up in the world? Well, what direction is your life going? Because that is going to be a reflection of what's happening in here. And if there's pieces of yourself in here that you're not looking at, then you're probably going to be missing out on a whole lot around you, and you're going to suffer for it. So it's just about trying to figure out, well, how can we speak to a person's pain and still give them hope at the same time? It's like, yes, like you have the capability to heal. You can do it. I know it's scary. I know it's hard. I know you feel like you're not seen. I know you feel like you're not heard. Your parents didn't love you, whatever it is. Maybe you got abused. Maybe you got beaten. Like all of these things. It's terrible, heartbreaking, absolutely. But there is a way forward, and you've got to be able to find that. And that's what I like you guys, just show up. So to give you a little perspective as well, I'm currently training for an Ironman. So that involves about 20 to 25 hours a week of training. That's a lot. For most of those sessions, I don't want to do them. Like I would just rather stay in bed. I'd rather just take the easy way out. For me, like it's just that rule. So show up, see what happens. And you start to adopt that mindset. It's like, okay, like maybe let's take the pressure off a little bit. Maybe this next swim that I'm about to do, about 3Ks, maybe it's not the be all end all. Maybe I'm still going to be okay even if I hit 2.5 every time I hit the numbers. But it's the same deal. It's like maybe this relationship could end. Maybe we could be together forever. I don't know. But let's just try. Let's just try and communicate a little bit more. Let's just try and figure out a way through instead of just being so reactive to each other and jumping on whatever each other says. Maybe let's just take 5 minutes, take a breather, and then come back to it. It's just those little things. It's just like, let's take the pressure off and approach our pain with a little bit more curiosity and judgment, I should say.
Yeah.
So once again, it's the story. And you know,
I totally agree with
and
that.
that's the thing, like, yeah, Chelsea, I don't know, Kate, did you grow up going to church as well?
Did I?
Yeah.
So I've got an interesting story. My my mom was Christian, but my dad was Jewish. So I had this weird family conflict. My dad's mom really didn't like my mom because she wasn't Jewish. But I had an amazing, my mom's mom was just a beautiful Christian, like one of those very giving Christians. I was not heavily into the church. I actually rebelled so much against religion because I saw this dynamic and I'm like, what is this about? You guys are fighting. As a child, I couldn't understand it. So I deep dove into every spirituality, everything, you name it. I tried it. I studied religion at university and I learned about all religions, all spiritualities. And it took me a really long time to get to this point. I've always been a spiritual person. I've always believed in God, but it wasn't until, so I'm in recovery. It wasn't until actually this year I had a few, so after my ex-husband died last year, I just relapsed really badly. And I went to a very dark place, but I feel like I have been running from myself for so long, and that was the first time that I met all of me. I saw everything. I saw who I was. I saw it all. And from that was my shadow work. That was my integration. And I found God again in the most spectacular, painful way. So I got baptized this year, and I now am very much, I lean into that a lot because that has completely changed my life. I mean, it's given me so much, my spirituality. And I feel like often what we are missing in life, what people are missing, as much as it's love, it's connection, it's a spiritual connection. It's definitely a spiritual connection if I look at my own journey. And I feel like that's maybe why I went through what I went through, because I need to help people with this. Like, whatever you believe, you know, as long as you are firmly rooted in a spiritual connection, it shows you how to love. I think it shows you how to have acceptance. It shows you patience. It shows you forgiveness. And I feel like that's what the world needs more of those things. Less judgment, more patience, more love, more forgiveness. So that's my spiritual story. That's my God story.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's funny how that works. So it's like the church is the place that teaches you how to love, but it can also be the place that teaches you how to judge, and judge very well as well, you know. And what I was alluding to before was like that pressure to be and to perform and to hold this standard to be Christ-like in that way. So it's like that's not really the energy of God, in my opinion. You
Not
know,
at all.
it's a little bit
counterintuitive.
yeah. It's funny when you go down that road when you people talk about, oh, don't associate with certain people because they're worldly. Yeah, well, Jesus sort of ate with sinners, so I'm gonna throw that in there. It's just like, how does that make sense? It's very hypocritical. But isn't that it? Like just being able to find your connection to a higher power and spirit and God, that godlike energy, in whatever way that like manifests itself for you. That's incredible. Like to be able to be in that spot and to feel connected to a source within you as well. And that's the one thing I found for me. It's just like there was always that disconnect between me and God. Like I always had to do something in order to get his favor or ask forgiveness to be in the right place. And it was like he seems so far away. And it's almost just like, okay, well, if you do the wrong thing, there's steps involved to become right again. Now these days, like throughout my experiences, like I still believe in source and in God in that way. It's like the source being source of love. Whenever I've been able to drop underneath the most painful emotions and experiences that I have held on to, every single time, all I've felt is love. Yeah. Not just like love as a feeling or, you know, something that I can do, but love as in that's who I am. Like that's the essence of me. And it always comes back to that. Every time that I've been able to drop underneath, like I know that I am the very essence of love. And to me, that's the spirit of God. Like that's the God essence. God is love. So to be able to be connected to that, that's what I believe as the collective we all are. And it's just sort of like we're just taking a little cup of our own bit of love and just taking it with us on our journey here to figure out what it actually means to have this human experience. There's ups, there's downs, there's pain, there's chaos, there's tragedy, there's all of it. But underneath all that, like there is a direct line between us and our ability to be able to live in that godlike essence as well. And that's the part that comes through self-discovery, to be able to tap into that. It's just like, yeah, we've made mistakes. Yeah, like we've experienced some real shit and we've gone through a lot that, you know, we don't really want to go through again. But underneath all of that, there is a power that we all hold that in a lot of cases we haven't even tapped into yet because we're just so driven by culture and society and politics and all these things that are just so prevalent in our world. It's like, how can we quiet the noise? How can we sit still? How can we tap in to what's going on within us? And a lot of cases, it's about slowing down, literally slowing down and just taking a breath. You know,
it's amazing.
And that's something that I realized. It's just like I moved so much.
Yeah, this like Thailand and Bali and all these places. That's what I love about them, and that's why they're so happy. I really believe because they're slowed down. They're just like living their lives. They're like the happiest people I've ever seen in my life. That's why I love Thailand. And I was like, I have to go back. I can't go back to California yet. Like I need to go back because it's a very slow pace of life and everyone is just so happy. So happy.
Yeah. There's something to it. 100%. 100%.
I just love what you said about love because I feel that it's like sometimes I just wonder if people think I'm a little bit loopy because I just I feel like a hippie because I'm just like it's about love. Like this is it. This is the key. And when we learn to master that, oh my God, there's this quote by what's his name? Someone Desjardins when he said, and then when humans learn to master, to harness the energy of love for a second time in history, man will have learned to wait. What is it? It's so beautiful. I have to look this quote up because it's literally my favorite quote. Man will have, hang on.
Just Google it. Just Google it.
Pursuit
I'd
of
be interested
love.
to hear more about, your journey and being so I feel like we're in similar but a little different places spiritually now. But having both of us come from that's the trauma, right? It's very interesting that and so my thing is that it's completely not biblical, and that's why I kind of rebelled against the church but took Jesus with me. And I was like, this guy is not about that stuff. Like, y'all got it wrong, and it's a power thing, it's a money thing. If you really break it down, the Catholic Church and the this and the that, and then you break it down. But the whole concept of God and love and spirituality and Jesus is that you don't have to earn anything. And over and over and over and over and over and over, he's saying you don't have to earn it. And it's just interesting that we came from, and I'm very blessed to have, at least I know, like, my parents were really good about telling me, like, you can tell us, we're going to still love you if you mess up. But I think that because of the structure of the church, I didn't believe that. You could tell me that over and over and over, but like, I will never forget the first time I drank. I thought my life was over, right? And I called my dad and like, yes. And I was like, it's going down, like,
Yeah,
and
I
I
get
will
it.
never forget him being like, I forgive you. Thank you for telling me. Like, I was like, what? I get to keep my life? Like, just because it was so extreme, like you said, the pressure of, and then like getting it, like from my point of view, like getting it from this public school to be cool enough and to be like the Malibu LA culture, skinny enough, this enough, that, rich enough, and then the church to be this enough, that. It was like I just felt like a freaking tight, I was the rope being pulled both ways, and it's exhausting, and so yeah, I'd definitely be interested to explore and to like hear more about how you went into that healing process and are still, I'm sure it's not an ever ending process, right? We're always still like growing, but healing those little parts of you and like giving that little boy the love that he was, even if it's ourselves that we're telling ourselves that I'm not good enough, like you said, like it's that one time dad couldn't go on a bike ride that I was, told myself it's because it's my fault or I did something, or the church was saying one thing. I actually realized too, looking back, that my grandma had shown me a book about like a plate, and it goes back to the sex thing, right?
You have 10
And my
minutes. I'm
brain,
just saying the time has gone on.
thank you. My brain had actually changed the story. When I went back and looked at the story, it wasn't saying that the China plate was like that the other plate wasn't as good. But the point was saying it was like trying to protect you. It was like, and I actually do agree with the concept they were trying to get at, but my brain turned it into I'm not good enough or I'm broken. Taught to us, but how we receive them, where we're putting blame that shouldn't be, et cetera, et cetera. Is it's deep rooted, and it's like hundreds of years of programming, right? And programming our parents that were then programming us. And now, hopefully we can change the conversation moving forward.
What's breaking the
100%.
cycle?
Did you find that quote, Kate?
I did.
Did you not find it? Read it out and then I'll jump into that.
And I will share it with you. It's my favorite. So, someday after mastering the winds, the waves, the tides, and gravity, we shall harness for God the energies of love. And then for a second time in history, in the history of the world, man will have discovered fire.
I like that.
I just love it. Yeah, till hard to shut down. I will share it.
It matches your energy very well, that quote.
Thank you. I received that.
But yeah, no, that's a lot, Chels. And I remember the real fear of making a mistake and thinking I was going to hell when I was a kid, because that was, it was how it was framed. Like, if you do enough bad stuff, you sort of got a quota. So you're probably increasing your chances if you lie about something, whether it's a white lie or a big lie, like whatever it is. So sick and guilty. My gut.
Yeah.
That was a common thing. Like, that was just normal for me growing up. And whilst, you have those conversations people around conditioning me to feel, but this.
I was in first grade. I went to school bawling, telling all the other kids they needed to like come to Christ, so they were all going to hell. Like that was like that. Like, I was bawling as a little first grader. Yeah. It's like,
yeah.
What are you supposed to do? Just let them die? Like, very.
But it's interesting though. Like, the frequency of fear is so low, and the vibration of love that's so high, and it's just like, well, there's a massive gap between what Jesus is and what the Bible claims him to be, right? And what we're actually professing and talking to. Yet everyone's living like they can't make a mistake. Everyone's doing the same exact thing, like we're all in a cult, because we have to abide by every single rule, or we're going to be kicked out of the herd, essentially. And that's what I started to see, like, over time. Was just like, my relationship with God was about everyone else around me. And there was always that middleman. It's like, there was me, there was man, and then there was God. If I had a problem, go talk to the pastor about it, because he's the most connected to God and he's going to give me the best advice possible. Don't talk to anyone else. Don't go to therapy, because, they're not Christian and they don't have the same faith that we do. So there was always like, this is who we are. Everyone else is bad. And that really painted a very poor picture of the world. And it's just like, well, you can't really connect with anyone because they're all worldly, stranger danger, all that sort of stuff. Networking is not going to be a thing, because people you talk to who you don't actually know, they're going to be a bad influence and you can't trust them. So it was always just like this real fear, and just real, like, just keep to yourself, So trying to work through that, when I got into my teenage years, even, there was that unrelenting pressure that I felt, for sure. I always felt angry, but I always buried it, because I didn't feel like I had a right to be angry, because, once again, God is love. We're blessed and highly favored, beautifully and wonderfully made, all that sort of stuff that gets spoken about. But then on the other hand, you read stories of Jesus flipping tables because, they were making sales in the temple. Okay, well, the man that we're supposedly following, or the figure that we're claiming to be our God or our higher power, he also was angry, and he also let that anger out. Like, he channeled that. But none of the men that I was around were doing that. They were always driven by shame. They would cover up their sins, you could say. Everyone was like probably jumping into each other's beds and no one knew about it. There was just all of that stuff that would happen on the back end that I had no idea growing up. I just felt like I had to do the right thing, that I was going to hell. And I was like, how can we be so judgmental of people that are making mistakes? The answer is everyone was just judging themselves. Like, that's what it just came back to. At the end of the day, everyone was in pain, so they looked to something else outside of them, being God, to make themselves feel better. So there was this projection of what God was to them that was false in that sense as well, because they were living in the direct opposition to that. And this is where, when I started going through this process of just feeling into the anger, the resentment, and the rage that I felt around, how dare you make me feel like I'm going to hell? Like, how dare you put this on me, that pressure, when you were doing the complete opposite, you know? And it went from ranging from don't drink alcohol because you're poisoning your body because it's the temple. Meanwhile, everyone's chugging their faces with hot dogs and shit food and treating their bodies like absolute garbage. All the way from that to speak truth, and everyone was living a lie. Like, there's so many like variables between what people were saying and doing. So the resentment was very high. I had a lot of anger, a lot of rage that I carried on throughout my years. And that feeling of not being good enough manifested itself in me trying to be with a woman and women after that, just trying to prove my worth. And it wasn't until I got to the point where I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm done interacting with females. Like, I actually have to be on my own to figure this out. And throughout that process, I realized that my connection with God has been there in a way that wasn't, I guess, supported in how, you know, how the church would present that. And so what I had to do was I had to go through that process of figuring out, okay, like, there's obviously a spiritual connection here. I don't know if it's in the form of Jesus or in God, but what I came to was that element of what I was talking to before, of source. And I realized that disconnect was all of the judgments and all of the projections that other people were putting onto me. And I never felt like I could actually get it right. So there was like me, and then there was God. But then over time, I realized with enough interactions where I can actually feel the essence of love itself in a way that's just, it's not usual. Like, there's something else that's very, very esoteric until you actually tap into that side of it. When I had enough of those experiences, I realized that I am God in that way. In my truest form, I am a representation of God.
Yeah.
And I got to that through being able to get underneath all of my pain and to be able to feel that sense of bliss and love and just ecstasy that came along with that. I realized that doing that enough, like, there is no disconnect between me and God. There is nothing I have to prove to Him. There's nothing I have to prove to anyone else. Like, I am love, I am loved, and I'm capable of loving. And we've got less than a minute. And that
That's a beautiful.
and that even like the Bible verse that says love your neighbor as yourself, like, you are the prerequisite to loving your neighbor. Like, that, you have to love yourself first before you love anyone else.
Yeah.
And even in that, like, that gets lost in translation too. Like, it all starts with you. That's your responsibility, and that's up to us to figure out how we can love and how we can actually tap